HISILA Yami, Madam Ila Sharma, Board Distinguished Alumni, I take immense pleasure in welcoming you all to this book discussion event today under the Sampark platform. Sampark is an India-Nepal alumni initiative launched by former President Mr. Rambaran Yadav on 26 January 2021. It seeks to bring Nepali alumni and students pursuing studies in India together on a common platform. It's an honor for the embassy to have this book discussion event by two distinguished alumni at Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center today. We look forward to an engaging discussion on Madam Yami's book, where she has encapsulated her personal life with former Prime Minister Mr. Baburam Bhattacharya and family, and also her political struggles, with the host, Madam Ila Sharma, who was at the other end of the political spectrum and sharing a personal tragedy also surrounding the events of today. I now give the floor to Madam Ila Sharma, the host of today's event and the convener of Sampark Bharat Nepal. To you, Madam.
Thank you, Priyadarshini. Sampark Bharat Nepal is an alumni association of Nepali, that Priyadarshini just said. For those who at some point or other studied in India, whether on scholarship or not. It is recognized by the Indian Embassy in Nepal and seeks to bring together thousands of Nepalis who are doing great work in Nepal back home. And this is one of the series of events that Sampark is organizing that highlights the achievements of Nepalis educated in India. Shall we begin? Sure. The first question is what prompted you to write this book? Thank you. But before I say this, I should really thank Sampark Bharat Nepal, because I must say that if you go around looking for many people who will be part of Sampark Bharat Nepal, it will be infinite, because as I can tell you, even in my own family, we were 7 children and 5 of them studied in India. And we used to have all kinds of sadhus and all that coming and teaching yoga. And my father was actually, our house was host to Ambedkar and even a person like Raul Siskutian. So I'm really immensely thankful to the Indian Embassy, who's in fact helping this Sampark Bharat Nepal to come. I nearly thought this program may be cancelled because of the COVID, and still, the way you took pain to kind of have a social distance and you took the decision to kind of hold it, I'm immensely thankful. So coming to your question as to why I should have written this book, I think this actually book covers 3 generations: my father's generation, my generation, my daughter's generation. So it gives a sense of history, and this I have written more from a gender perspective and to some extent inclusion, and of course the political arena, from one stage to another stage to another new stage. So from that point of view, I feel it is my responsibility to let people know about the history of Nepal, and also to some extent the history of communist movement, left movement, because that is also a global phenomena. So from that point of view, I wrote.
You just said that you were 7 siblings,
yes,
and out of 7, 5 of them studied in India.
That's right.
So your family attached great importance to education.
Yes, indeed.
Your sister is here today in the audience. She went to Kanpur IIT.
Yeah.
So isn't it a bit unusual for a Newar family of Kathmandu in those times to have, you were 6 sisters,
Yeah.
you are 6 sisters and 1 brother. So having almost all the girls being sent to India for studies, is it
Yeah, it's unusual in the sense that you see, my father and mother both were in the movement against the Rana movement. So, I mean, although they came from, Tuladhar means merchant class. So, because they both were part of the movement, so the only thing they could see future for us was in the education. And my mother herself was very, very keen to be educated. In fact, she was not educated, and she learned ABC of education throughout, when she was serving in the jail, when she was outside the jail, and my father's friends would come and teach her. And then she was running a very informal school. She was teaching there. She would learn from my father's friends, and then she would go and teach. So, there was this urge to teach, and naturally, genetically, I think we also took to that, So,
So it was more your mother than your father who stressed education. It appears from the book that you have a multi-dimensional personality, academics, you're an architect, sports, and whatnot. What do you attribute it to? Education, we can understand it was your mother. So
I would
who propelled you
yeah,
to
that's right. I think I would attribute it to IIT Kanpur, frankly speaking. Even now I remember IIT Kanpur because that's one area where education was so much valued. There was this to live simply and to kind of pursue your education. And not only that, I saw professors teaching their children all kinds of sports and music and instruments, all that environment I was seeing, and so I became easily part of it because I think my nature was such that I'm more extrovert.
You look very tomboyish in one of the pictures.
Even I now, right now, I think I'm quite tomboyish.
Okay. Did you have NCC, the Scouts at Kanpur IIT?
No, I didn't have that.
Your life is full of things that are unconventional. What made you break the stereotypes? That's one. Wait. You have talked about your transformation from social awakening to political awakening in this book.
Yeah.
How did that take place?
So first of all, I'm out of box because my parents themselves were out of box, because as I told you, both my parents came from a merchant class, to ladder, but they went out of box. They went to jail, they went to street, and they were pursued by the state and all that. So to many extent, I mean, of course, there was a gendered way of also bringing up, as I mentioned in my book, that my brother was given extra kind of education in terms of he was sent to St. Xavier's to study, not only to study, but he was also put in a hostel, whereas we all sisters, we were in a government-run school. So besides that, besides that difference, otherwise the environment was quite free, like if you take from Newar culture kind of perspective.
Because Kathmandu Newars are known to be a bit conservative, not very, your family was quite exceptional in that.
Yeah, and regarding that question that how did I jump from the social awakening to the political, I would attribute this to Dr. Bhavaram Bhattrai, because it was he who in fact introduced me, my father politically. I mean, my father was father more genetically, but politically it was he who introduced me.
Your Baburamji had read the book that your father had written, which is called Sadharan Nepali Congress.
Not my father had written, but it was some say Jabarao had written that.
Okay, and your father, it was Bharat Shamsher.
Oh, Bharat Shamsher.
Yeah. And then that's how Baburamji knew about your father.
That's right.
Okay. The ideology that inspired you to become a politician is about equality of opportunities. You saw injustices in the society, justice for the downtrodden, for the marginalized, which is understandable for anyone who stands up for equal treatment, dignity of human beings. Now this question, Nepal was already an electoral democracy when you took up arms to bring about transformation. And your party, again, is a part of electoral democracy today. Do you think sometimes if another option was possible instead of an armed struggle?
That's a very good question. Actually, what you should see that in all countries, they go through evolution and revolution. Okay. So evolutionary movements were in fact going on and on, be it 1950, revolution, which was actually done by B.P. Koirala, and later on by Jhapa Andolan, and later on you had movement, people's movement first and people's movement second, of course, after the People's War started. So all they were actually accumulative kind of movement to weaken the king, the monarchy system. They were weaken the monarchy system. But to do away with it, it needed a qualitative jump. Okay, it needed a qualitative strike. It needed a qualitative initiative, which People's War did, and eventually we see that we have Republic Nepal. That's the result, I would say.
You have been very candid in the book. It reads like such an honest view of your convictions and your tribulations. For example, you have talked about depression. You went through depression when you were studying in the UK, which is still very quite taboo, no? Quite stigmatized in the society today. You've been critical of your father, who himself was a revolutionary, for the way he treated your mother. And you have talked about Manushi facing racism in a school. Yeah. So you have not, like this book, you have not tried to sweep things under the carpet. You have come out with things which are quite taboo, because one wouldn't expect an author of autobiography to talk about their father in a critical way, and be very candid about things. So, can you tell a little about your father, about your depression? Depression is a big issue these days, especially with COVID. And what made you talk about it? How does it feel? And what is the message that you have for people who are going through depression or who face such situations?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it's important that I had to talk something about my own father, who was political and literary and all that social. You see, what happens is when you are in power, usually power, in fact, infects people. Okay? So I also make sure that I don't get infected and Bhavanam Bhattarai doesn't get infected, just as my father got infected to some extent. He never treated like that to my mother when both of them were in the movement. But once the power came into question, and that's where, in the book I have written how my mother, in fact, was so relieved when he came out of ministerial, because there was a pressure on her that, or on him, that he should remarry, you see. So, because, there was a pressure, I've written in that. And then also he took to drinking later on, you see, because, so which, most of the politicians, you see that they drink, and even Prachanda drinks. Maybe Bhavanam is one of the few ones who don't drink and all that. But what I'm trying to relay in the book is that power is good. Okay, power is good for transformation, all right. But when power becomes for the sake of power, then a lot of negative things comes into picture. So that slight deviation that came in my father's, I thought it should be exposed, because even I start looking around, that same thing can happen to me, and then so I have to make sure that it doesn't take place. I myself may be also corrupted with power.
And he must have found that in his wife, she would take it quietly, she would take it. Yeah. So that's what happens in most of domestic violence, not necessarily physical, because you target somebody who doesn't have enough power, who is inferior in the power.
And regarding the depression, I think it is a very important issue right now with COVID again resurging in a different variant forms. So what I would say that the situation is such that it is creating that depressive situation, not only within the locality, within the country, within the region. Globally, depression is going to be something which you have to learn to fight against and to live. So from that point of view, I think my mention of depression is very important.
The reason for your depression in UK was
multiple. They have written. So first of all, I reached there later on, late, and then secondly, the kind of treatment method on my daughter. She went through racial, and all that. And lastly, I had some problem with the calculations, which of course I went around looking for. The fact which I have tried to emphasize on depression is that you should tell people that you are depressed, and depression is in some way, it's like cold also. It comes and it goes, and it can be as easy as that, but it can be as complicated as I have told you. There was my friend, Malaysian friend, she did not tell. As a result, I went there as a mother. I had a child, but I finished my course in time. Not only that, in fact, my course went so well that I was given the platform for giving an interview in the world BBC. But she was actually a single woman, But because she did not tell her problem, she had to lose 1 year. She had to stay 1 year extra to go through the master in architecture. So my convey to people all around the world is that depression is something at any point it can just take place in any person, any strong person or any weak person. It is the question of how you handle it, and the only way to handle is to be clear about it and to tell to important people. You don't go around telling everyone. You go to a doctor or the person who will help you, but you have to tell.
Right.
And regarding the racial abuse, I think that was also one issue which surprisingly, it came, as a shock for me. So even in that case, I think Manusha will be able to tell best how she overcame. Because, when she went through racial abuse, I was a bit worried about how she would conceive me, because she saw me as a very strong woman, a politician, in Nepal, and suddenly she sees me crying for every little things, and
children are very resilient.
So she's quite resilient from that point of view.
Yeah, that shouldn't have happened, and it still happens.
And still happens.
That, yeah. Okay, you have written in detail how you met Babu Ramji, your relationship, but still for those who have not read the book, how did you fall in love with him? When was that moment when you said, okay, this is it, this is the man I'm going to marry or spend the rest of my life with? And you have this very unusual marriage declaration, which is a part of this book, where you talk about a higher level. You are going to reach a higher level, do things together. And it also seems like a partnership where you can always part ways. Yeah. So when did that happen, that moment when you said, okay, this is the Brahmana man I'm going to spend my life with? And what made you write the marriage declaration?
I would say that if mobile was there, in those days, our marriage wouldn't take place. Because in mobile, he could have easily sent the message immediately, and I would have got a message not to meet him. But because it was a postal system, the letter reached late. So before the letter reached me, I went and met him. Yeah. Of course, in the letter, if you see, it's printed there, he told me not to come. But when I went there without getting the letter,
the hostel.
But he couldn't help himself pouring out what was, actually tormenting him. So at the end of the day, he had to ask me whether you want to get married to me, which was so surprised for me. I mean, it was really shock for me. So I told him I'll take time about it and all that.
It was providence that you went to the hostel physically.
No, because,
and he had an
because I had to go there. I was going there because we were in the students' movement, you see. So I would go and he would come to my hostel and I would go to his hostel. So that kind. I used to call him Dai, which means brother. So.
Okay, and you have said in the book, and even when we met personally, this book mentions that in the title, First Lady. You have said you were attacked most when your husband was the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So what could be the reason? Yeah.
See, one thing is that I was very preemptive in the sense, I've written in the book, preemptive in the sense that because I had seen my mother suffering when my father became minister. Okay, so when Bauram became Prime Minister and when I was entering in Baluatar, I remembered my mother. I said, look, I'll be now target of attack. It will be a different kind of attack actually. She was kind of attacked more from a traditional point of view that, like he was forced to kind of go and look around for a beautiful woman or more smarter woman or something. But in my case, I knew I would be politically attacked. So I was prepared. So from that point of view, I mean, the kind of media attack on me, and even with from the party also, a very sly kind of attack on me, all these things. Because I had expected, so I think I handled pretty well.
Have you sensed a very deep-seated misogyny in our society? the reason for attack could be. Our society can't stand women who are themselves, or there could be a stranger you don't even know who could be hating you, not because that person has anything personal against you, but just because you are a woman and you are vocal and you are assertive, and people just don't like you. So do you think the reason there was more attack on you is because you are vocal, you are assertive, you are a person of your own, you have your own career, you are a capable woman?
Yeah, I would look at it locally, regionally, and even globally. Like I've written in there that when I'm being attacked, I even went about Googling for the way Hillary Clinton was being attacked, So I would say it's a phenomena which you have to face right from birth to your death. It's so much part of you, part of the society, that it's like breathing oxygen, like it's there everywhere in some way or the other, and it becomes worse when there is crisis, right? Like COVID, you are finding that women and Dalits and all the oppressed region, oppressed ethnicity, oppressed gender, they are being attacked because you see the whole situation is so kind of unclear, and the economy is going down, and there's a lot of competition for job, and so eventually what happens, the next person to attack will be your wife, and the wife will attack the children. It just goes on and on, and it's really spiraling, and it's
pecking order.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it is socio-economic, politico-economy which really plays into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and there's a violence between even men and men, because stronger men will attack the weaker men. That will be
basically about power structure.
Yeah.
And yes, we have seen that there have been so many prime ministers. Well, our presidents never had a spouse, both of them. But most of the prime ministers whose wives are vocal and assertive and have a career of their own, they are being attacked. But the wives who are in the shadows, who are not too visible, nobody talks about them. Okay. What are the dreams? What are your dreams for Manushi, for your daughter?
I would say not only Manushi, I mean, let's say for future
for the generation. We all want our next generation to be better than us.
Well,
so
I would just say, I think I've written in my book, at the end of the day, I said, look, I've gone through so many stages, and with every new stage, there's a challenge. Okay, so I would say for the coming generation, their challenge is very different from our challenge. I think their challenge, besides being political, social, it's a technological also, because the challenges this is bringing, plus and minus. So from that point of view, I think their challenge is going to be more complex than our generation, and they should be prepared.
What kind of a human being you would like her to be? You would like her to be a revolutionary, you would like her to be, what kind of person? Because she has genes from you and Babu Ramji both.
Yeah, I want her to expand, or I want the future generation to expand and expand and expand. Because as I told you that, you see, the next generation has to deal with robotics, you have to deal with
AI,
mobile, you have to deal with AI and all that. So there is a challenge and there is opportunity both. So last, which the next generation should look for, is to be inclusive as much as possible. You have to learn to live with differences. Differences is not unequal. You should learn to live with differences, accept and all that.
Mm-hmm. You see, two of us, we represent two ends of a spectrum. I lost the father of my children to the conflict. He was a striking force commander in Jajarkot, Panchkatia. On the other side, you and your friends led the conflict which killed him, and many on your side were also killed. Many are still disappeared, missing. Many lives were lost on both sides. Many were orphaned. Yet we are sitting here today because we both have a very personal stake in this country, in the future of this country. Mm-hmm. So what's your vision of the future? Now that we have a new constitution, we have a new democracy, we have, we had a democracy since 1990, But we have a new constitution after the peace process, and everything, democracy is on track after the last elections. How do you see the future, your vision, because you're a minister, physical planning? So let's talk about the country, about the future.
First of all, I must thank you, Ila, because you are the main person who's now hosting this. Knowing the background that you've lost your beloved husband in this conflict, and though I haven't lost any of my family members, but I was very much part of the whole movement. And in fact, I've just recently been visiting this TRC and disappeared council. And I think where both of us are together, in the sense that I would say, I mentioned in that book how I felt, in a way, a very dramatic kind of situation where when I became a minister, I had Nepali army who was guarding me at one end, and I had PLA, because that time we were still carrying PLA with guns. In fact, we still had that, So both of them with guns, but opposite to each other, and I was sitting in the middle as a minister. So it was also a very awkward situation there, as I'm finding the same awkwardness is here. I would just say that this kind of situation we should look at in a holistic picture, that as I early in the beginning, I had said that in any country or in any part of the world, you have evolution and a revolution. Okay, when you say revolution, it is something which is very qualitatively different, where people die, like if you see the movements, or if you see even India, if you say India, right from 1857 to 1949, I'm told about 10 lakh of people got killed. If you see the movement, the Communist Party had a revolution in China, a number of people were killed. From that point of view, if you see the number of those killed in our context, Nepal, 17,000, I mean, is not a very big one, I would say, though it's a very painful position. Even if you look at, I think, France, which is generally known as a birthplace of liberty, fraternity, and all that. See, at the fourth stage of republic that came, at the fourth stage only, they had one revolution, threw away the kingship. Again, it came back. So again, it came in the fourth. Finally, it became a republic. So from that point of view, I think in Nepal's context, I think the years that took was quite less, and even the number of people who died, if you compare with other countries, it is relatively less. Nevertheless, people died from both the sides. Now, the question is, where I'm most worrisome is that these two councils which are being made, they are being kind of not taken seriously by government as well as the parties. And that's where you and we come together and then say that what is the achievement that your family has died and so many of my friends, my close comrades have died. Okay, so from that point of view, I feel really sorry, and I really feel we both must work towards finding some kind of solution to these people who are looking for whether they are dead or not, and those who are dead, their basic needs need to be taken care of, and they need to be dignifiedly defined as Shahid or whatever the nomenclature today this government is giving or should be giving.
And also, they should, everybody, all the victims, the families, the victims that survived, some of them are not, on both sides, they are not, they are invalids or something. People should have had an opportunity to speak, to talk about it, hearing. So there is a closure, which actually never happened. I realized the importance of closure, HISILA ji, when I lost my cat in Gorakhpur.
Okay.
And, it's been over a year, and I still think of, is she alive? How is she doing? Well, so when people die, you cry, you come to terms with it. But when there are people missing,
I can see that.
it's important that there is a closure.
Yeah.
And it's important for people to heal when there is a hearing.
Yeah.
You know, people should empathize on both sides, and they let them speak. This is what happened to us, but that has never happened. And so much water has passed under the bridge now. But I think you and me sitting here together, this is also a part of healing for the conflict victims on both sides. Now, a little more about future.
Yeah, I think let people.
I have one last question, HISILA ji. I would like to know your, I know I can understand your worldview from the book. And today, until now, we have been talking about, you know, multinationals, this problem, that problem, global justice. But now we have moved towards planetary justice.
Yeah, planetary justice.
Where we consider, we bring into account non-human animals, we bring into account the whole ecosystem, the climate justice, everything is there. So we live in this world in a way, we softly trade. We don't cause disturbances in the world, and we live, you know, this planet is meant for everybody, not just for us, not just for the humans. When I asked you about, you know, what is the vision of this, what is your vision for this country? Now I'm asking you, what is your vision for the whole of the world, for humanity, for the whole planet?
Yeah, that's right. What we should not forget is that we are animals. We are animals. From animals we develop into human beings, let me tell you that. And so animals are very much part of this whole planet. And for animals, they need nature, they need vegetation, they need plantation, they need greeneries. So all these are integrated. And so from that point of view, again I'm coming to the future generation that you asked me. What is the message you want to give to the future generation? Is the inclusiveness. So it is not the inclusiveness within the humanity only. I'm saying the whole world, you know, in terms of integrated form, where you have animals, where insects are also involved. You shouldn't hate the insects, okay? And you have plantations, and you have human beings. And because human beings are added, I mean that value added element in the human being is that they can think of future, they are aware of the past, they are aware of the present, and they are aware of the future. So for the sake of future survival of the whole planet, they have to expand beyond human beings. They have to expand beyond animals. They have to expand beyond the nature, beyond the vegetation, and that they are all integrated. This is what I feel.
Yeah, we need to have a balance.
Yeah,
The problem, I think, begins when humans start thinking we are the only inhabitants. That's what goes, you know, you are superior as a human being to other animals. You have better, you know, you are more intelligent, and that's. But I think with sophistication, with evolution, us being a superior species, we should have empathy.
Yeah.
And when there is empathy, all the problems get resolved. Then we won't need war.
Yes.
We won't need a conflict.
Yeah. So I think we should
Questions?
ask your questions. Yeah.
We had given a slip of paper where you were supposed to write questions.
But anyway.
The questions are for HISILA ji.
Yeah.
You are an architect, and when you did masters, you did a very good thesis on housing, focusing on gender issues, right? Even otherwise, because we were teaching together in the Institute of Engineering, and then you were very much concerned about the state of architecture, which was deteriorating. In your book somewhere you mention, you know, you kind of lament about this concrete jungle coming up and all that. But then you see, I was expecting, because Babaram Bhattaraiji was the Prime Minister, of course during his time this extension of the roads took place. But then especially in the architecture front, nothing, you know, very prominent emerged, given that both of you are architects. Is it because, of course, you worked a lot on this Melamchi project, which you have described in the book. But then you see this architecture, because both of you are architects, it appeared to be in shadow. Maybe I have not understood it properly. Could you just highlight on it, given that you are from a newer family and Nevos, they have such a lovely architecture, lovely city planning, their tradition is so, beautiful. So can you just highlight on that?
Yeah, sure.
You have the microphone already.
I have, I forgot. Yeah, that's a good question actually. See, the thing is that in Nepal's context, infrastructure is more important. The architecture is actually more on the aesthetic side. So, like infrastructure, if you see, even Melamche took a stand on it, okay, and then also, actually people say the road expansion started with Baburam Bhattarai, but I would just add to it that before he became a minister, I became a Minister of Physical Planning and Works. And actually, I started the expansion of a road from Kalanki. Okay, from Kalanki. So actually I started that, and not only in Kathmandu, I also started expansion of road in Pokhara, in Prithvi Chowk, like. So to some extent I also, that's again civil engineering. But if you say from architect's point of view, then I also made it sure that when I was a Minister of Tourism, actually in this Ravi Bhavan, there's this, I forgot, there's this institution for institution for the uplifting the, it's an institution for tourism. So there I made sure that,
HMTTC.
yeah, I made sure that there's a girls hostel there. There was space also, they had budget, and actually I allotted budget for girls hostel there. So from that point of view, I think architecture, even from Baburam Bhattarai, if you know that he went out of his way to save the open spaces in Kathmandu Valley. He, in fact, many of the parks were made under his directions. So one of them was this Naxal, Naxal, that beautiful place,
right?
that.
Yeah, I think that's what we remember him most for.
Yeah.
Baburamji, his prime ministership, widening of roads.
She's wanting to.
Bharati.
Yeah, Bharat.
I just have a few observations. That's why I didn't, provide my questions. But I'd like to congratulate HISILA, for documenting this important journey. It's your story, right? And I think this book is important for many reasons. First, it gives us a rare insight into the People's War and its chronology and its achievements. Second, it provides a rare insight into the actors of the People's War. Their minds, their thinking, their actions, their attitude, which you have so lucidly documented in the book. And third, you share your own personal journey and growth as a political leader and a human being. Of course, there are many other reasons, but the most important, I feel, is that this is from your perspective, and that's why I like to call it her story. Because most of the historical facts are documented by men. That's why I think it's very important. And I really thoroughly enjoyed reading the book. I read it word for word, page for page.
Thank you so much.
And because it is written in such a simple, candid, and practically vivid manner, one can easily make a movie out of this. I don't think the scriptwriter or the director will have any problems. But then you mentioned in the book that the People's War was not just about power and politics, it was also about social and cultural transformations. Now this transformation that you talk of again focuses on class. To quote, one should not locate the weakness of people in their character, but in their class background. While one cannot agree with you that the revolutions have been led midway for whatever reasons, we have analyzed them very well, your analysis that ideological supremacy has to be matched with economic development and education and cultural upliftment, and only when Marxism is accepted as a choice,
Yeah.
it presents a viable
Good.
solution. I think it needs a bit more elaboration,
Yeah,
reflection, and discussion.
yeah, that's lovely.
Therefore, I have three observations.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
I think just the focus on classical Marxian theory of class analysis may not be adequate in the context of Nepal. Why? Because as you are aware, Nepal is characterized by great geographical, ethnic, cultural, religious, and linguistic diversity. In fact,
Yeah.
class, caste, gender, language, religion, geographic location, etc. All of these create, vectors of oppression and privilege. And therefore, identity-based politics is very dangerous because it can have a silo approach that can be divisive, produce intolerance, and lead to violence, which we have already witnessed. My second observation is that your claim that the Maoists never used rape as an instrument of torture, to say it so categorically, and as we witnessed during the decade-long Maoist war, the People's War, women's bodies became the battleground during that time to avenge and humiliate the opposing party. And there is some data that make it possible to state that sexual violence was used as a weapon and a war strategy by both sides to the armed conflict.
Okay.
And my third and last point, and perhaps this third and last point needs a wider and deeper discussion outside of this hall. But I wanted to draw your attention to your analysis of gender inequality, which again focuses just on class analysis, according to the Marxian interpretation that economic emancipation is key for achieving equality between women and men. I think here Marx himself was a bit wrong here. On the one hand, he said that men's lives are fragmented because they're working in the factory assembly line and they don't see the results of what they produce. And women's lives are very holistic by staying at home and they can witness the result of their own creation. But on the other hand, he said that women should also work to get economic emancipation. So, of course, we do not doubt that economic emancipation is key or economic empowerment is key for women's overall empowerment, but it's just one aspect of women's overall empowerment. And it does give them, the confidence to lead abusive relationships and violent relationships. But there are other dimensions of gender inequality, particularly the lethal combination of feudalism and patriarchy. And in our context, that disempowers and acts as a barrier to achieving gender equality. But then you do address this in passing, here and there. And one doesn't get quite a clear picture of what you think women's empowerment and gender equality should be. And therefore, as I said, perhaps there should be a deeper and wider discussion on what radical, Marxian, socialist, cultural, environmental, all the other strands of feminism mean to us, because you also say you're a feminist, right? Including the critical race theory of Du Bois and Crenshaw's intersectionality theory. So let us have that discussion maybe at some other time. Yeah. But then once again, thank you very much, HISILA. It takes a lot of courage and grit, to write and share and publish this book.
Okay, thank you. I would say, it's very interesting because, I had this temptation of writing class and extra class issues, But then later on, I thought if I write extra class issues, then I'll have to explain. And the book was already expanding so much. And, and it was like actually within 4 years I finished. But, the publication time was taking a bit longer. So I didn't want to make it longer. Actually, I had this in my mind, class and extra class issues. So I'm very much aware of the, the ethnicity, the regional, and the Dalit question, and even you have this cross-gender issues and all that. So from that point, now when you say identity-based ideology, I would say not identity-based ideology, but empowerment-based ideology, because women need to be empowered, even Dalits need to be empowered, even ethnic oppressed need to be empowered, So, so I would like to just add to that. And then rape as an instrument, of course, it was very clearly seen, especially when Nepal army came into picture. You see, the number of disappearance started increasing like anything, and rape also started taking place like anything.
So I don't know whether from the Maoist side there was, like the same kind of thing got done. I never heard it, let me tell you. Even till now, if I go to these councils, the disappeared and killed, council, TRC, if they give me some account on that, I would very much like to go into detail whether really these things took place or not. But as far as when I was writing this book, I had no idea where, actually the Maoists were there raping people, raping others and all that. So I was very candid about it. So from that point of-
It is a given that the power structure in our society, the patriarchy, that rape will be an instrument of, whoever is powerful at that point of time will use rape, violence against women, sexual violence. There may have been more records of the government side, the security forces doing it, probably because they are formalized. But anybody can see that, like Bharti said, rape is used, sexual violence is used against anyone who is seen as weaker. As Bharti brought out how you wrote the book, how, you said it took you 4 years. There's a question from Pratibhaji. Had you been taking notes over the years preparing for this book? Because you described some things in such great detail, especially your comrades, their backgrounds, all the dynamics. So had you been taking notes all these years?
Yeah, so actually, I have this habit of writing, in diary. And then, this mobile makes it so easy now. Whenever I just even discussion something, even reading the books, also reminded me of many things which I was forgetting. So I have that habit.
And Pratibhaji has asked me if I will be writing a book at some point. Who knows? No. Maybe if I think my experience will help people.
Yeah,
Not an autobiography, but something anecdotal, how the elections are held.
Yeah,
For one, HISILA, I think the election commission, the people who work there, they are unsung heroes. We recently have seen, there was a picture in Twitter how the election commission in Himachal Pradesh, how they are braving the weather, they are kept to all the people that work and so silently at the election commission. I don't know what the Akhtiyar Durupayog Anusandhan Ayog was like, but I have such great respect for all the people who work at the election. I've seen undersecretaries, joint secretaries loading stuff in trucks, ma'am. The logistics is so complicated, especially because the date of the election commission is never, fixed. Election commission doesn't declare the dates. So it keeps getting postponed and everybody is in a state of emergency. So,
Yeah, why don't you write
yes,
a book?
maybe.
Because, yeah. Yeah.
Yes. The question is for HISILA.
I don't actually have any questions.
Observations.
I just have some my academic observations.
Academic.
Since I am from academia.
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to thank the host, Samparka Bharat Nepal, and especially Ila and Madam HISILA for inviting and making me the part of the event. And it's my honor to have been asked to share some of my views on this discussion forum. I have noted some academic observations that, of course, hold some distinct qualities and features of this publication, right? First of all,
Who is it
I
from?
would say that it's an added literature in the existing literature of people's war, political violence, the conflict studies, and state transformations, and the state building, and state restructuring. This is an added one, number one. Number two, this is the most original contributions, right, to explore the pain, the miseries, the difficulties, the sorrows, the joys, and the constraints, and all the sacrifices of in our patriarchal society that we see, and how the woman, especially the girl, they come up from their miseries to have their own identity. The author has well explained with
I would just like to, because in this also I wanted to add of that. It was not only class struggle, it was ethnic, like being a Newar, I went through that lingual, that I wanted to put, but as I told you, see, there was no space for me to go on adding, but that was also.
The most impressive part of the book that I found, it is the collection of the first-hand knowledge, the author first-hand observations and experiences, where the author really shares her experiences, right, in first-hand, from her personal life, from, say, family life and the community, from her educational institutions, or say her from academic life, and as a part of Politburo of the Communist Party of Nepal as well. So she has shared all those in a very lively way. That has made the book more interesting, fruitful, and very research-oriented as well. So this has been a source of inspiration, not only for the women of Nepal, but the women in the region and beyond. So what does the book give us? I have observed that this book gives readers a powerful way to understand the development of democracy in the 21st century. As I have not been able to go through each and every chapters, I have focused on this part, and that basically stands out. Madam also spoke on 21st century, what would be the vision. That basically stands for equality, justice, and the right to self-determination. That has been the strong message of this book. I really appreciate. Now, what does this book hold on? My view is it holds the voice of the voiceless people, the voice of the oppressed people. It holds voice of those people who are seen but are hardly seen, who are seen but are hardly heard. So in a society where human beings are being discriminated because he is a man and she is a woman, the book flows the message that women, like their counterparts, they are capable of good leadership and rational behavior, but their inherent quality and the capability have not been nurtured and explored by proper education and the training and the socialization.
Excuse me, we need to give her time to speak.
So the sociocultural taboos, the conservative mindsets, the patriarchal mindsets, that all compel women and girl child to see their inferior status as a part of their normal life.
Yes, thank you.
It may not even in your perception of what they are missing in claiming their rightful possibilities and opportunities.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I have written a few other points that I will share.
That you can share. Ma'am, you can share it.
Suggestions, there are few suggestions.
You can share in the chat box.
Write it down later
Facebook
on.
Live.
Because there are other questions.
Facebook Live.
Index number, and you can also write some research methodology part in the book.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and you can also give suggestions in the chat box of the Facebook Live,
That would be fantastic.
so everybody can see it. There is another question, similar question from Blessy Dhakal.
Okay.
What is your long-term goal in writing this book?
Oh,
So
that's
maybe you can briefly tell a little about why you wrote this book. Savitri, you
My
have a question?
long-term goal, again, is inclusive world, inclusive family, inclusive community, inclusive party, and inclusive government. That's it.
She has briefed it so beautifully in very, concise manner. Savitri,
Small observation. First of all,
let me introduce Savitri Devi because she forgot to introduce herself. You also forgot
yeah.
to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Savitri Thapa Gurung, she is the former commissioner of CIA.
Good, lovely.
Please go ahead.
congratulations. Thank you. I felt very much connected because of Jane alumni and because of you.
You were also.
From Jane. And when I was there, still student, Dr. Baburam Bhattarai as a Prime Minister came, and our university was so much beautified, and they were so happy that seek pride from heart, by happiness. And there are so many things I felt connected. One of the connection I would like to read from your book, quote, celebration of 8 March became quite challenging in 1990. Women leaders with varied political allegations came together to celebrate International Women's Day. 8 Padma Kanya, multiple campus in Kathmandu. The leaders and attendees had tied black bands on their arms to protest against the atrocities in Pokhara and another place. We spoke against the panchayat system and pledged to fight for democracy. Within a second, a police van arrived. 5 leaders, including myself, you said, myself were arrested. Those was first experience in police custody. In those 5 leaders, I don't think myself as a leader, but in those 5 leaders I was one.
Oh, you're one.
If you remember,
Okay, yeah.
I was one. Even not only in that is 2046 Andolan, I was only one student protester in Virendra campus.
Okay.
35-36
Sal,
Andolan.
yeah.
And later on, 35-36 Andolan also. I have also many experiences being revolutionary thought.
Yeah.
Unlike you, maybe yours is more revolutionary, but still,
Yeah, you went through.
From a farmer family, I think myself a revolutionary person and that leader, and I am very much thankful to you to bring such a nice book. I have not gone all through, just 5 chapters, and I and many like us are inspired by you writing this book. In our own way we can write, and I have another observation that it seems like although I have not gone through all the chapters, but it seems like your and Babram Bhattacharya's memoir, because all the places you
Yes,
have
mentioned.
given his experiences, his story also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Savitri. Savitri, you teach political science, right? That's what you were teaching.
No, I was actually very happy to see you because I remember those good old days when we used to go to street together and all that.
Okay, now we have the last question. We are running out of time.
Yeah.
How do you, since you are an architect, urban planning and everything, so how do you see the rise of the size of middle class in Kathmandu as a result of the Maoist conflict? Everybody, they all came to the capital. So now there is a huge middle class in Kathmandu. So how do you see the rise of size of middle class in Kathmandu, which resulted from that decade of conflict? And how do you connect it with the crisis of Newari identity of the valley?
That's a very good question. From where did
Kamal
it come?
Fuyal, Mr. Kamal Fuyal.
Oh, Kamal Fuyal, that's a very good question you asked.
I'm sorry, I needed to.
Yeah, you're right. You
tell
know
your name
that, in
first.
fact, I've observed, I mean, I've put it in my book also, that when I came to Kathmandu, I saw Kathmandu not as the old traditional Newar Kathmandu, but concrete Kathmandu, and I saw so much upsurge of buildings, and so yeah, the middle class increased, but sadly in that even the Maoist middle class increased, because it was the Maoists who were in fact fighting for regional, national, like empowerment. And what I see is that rather than staying in their own region, their state, their home, they are coming again to Kathmandu to build their own house, and they are neglecting their, their state, their district, They've become Katma-centric and they've become middle class. And still they are saying they are not only communists, they are saying they are still Maoist. And if you look at the recent, I think, eighth convention of Maoist, if you see their document, I mean, it's ridiculous, I would say. And they are practicing, you know, a multi-party system, and they're very much, their fingers are dipped into that, and still they are going back to, you know, Maoism, and they're talking about revolution, they're talking about, you know, imperialism and expansionism or whatever, you know. And so from that point of view, you know, I would say, yes, the middle class is increasing, and you can see it physically in urbanization, which you have rightly observed.
Thank you, Kamalji. Now one last question, HISILA ji. What are the major challenges being faced by this new Republic of Nepal, and how do you suggest, how should we, everybody, politicians, public, voters, civil society, how should we handle the challenges so that this new republic lives longer and better and we do well?
Very good question. Very good
This
question.
is from Dr. Uddhav Pyakuran. He is also JNU alumni.
Oh, Dr. Uddhav, that's a nice question. I think it's the last question, and you know, it caps up the whole thing. So what I would say is that Maoist movement war started as a transformative movement. But what you find is that the main leader, instead of taking that transformative agenda and changing the socio-economic situation of the country, after changing the political scenario, they became one of Congress, one of Communist UML, and in fact, to be precise, they became power-centric. So as a result, one started questioning as to, you know, what was the purpose of People's War? What was the purpose of 17,000 people dying? What is the purpose of 13,000 disappearance and all that. But having said that, I think we should not be disappointed. The way we have done away with Oli, who represented 21st century panchayat, I would say. The way we removed him was fantastic, but having said that, one has to face Nepal now from economic point of view, from the real what Nepal represents. It's Himal, Pahad, Tarai. It's 1/3 Aryakas, 1/3 Madesi, 1/3 Janjati. So capping up all the together these, if you go on struggling for these issues, I think the transformative issues which were raised by People's War will slowly be taken up, and that is why we are saying that the constitution is half full, half empty glass, and that half empty needs to be now, we should go for fulfilling it. Thank you so much.
And in an electoral democracy, HISILA ji, people who don't perform, people who are elected, they can always be, you know, people get to choose.
Yeah. So I would request that all of you should go for, you know, electoral reform if it is needed, and you should educate the people that, well, we have achieved political transformation, but we haven't achieved the social, economic transformation, which will enhance and, in fact, help in stabilizing the political achievement that we have got through People's Movement, People's War, that through Madesi movement, through Dalit movement, through gender movement, all that we need to consolidate it.
Right, and for that we need informed voters.
Yeah.
And the politicians need to know that once they don't perform,
Yeah.
people are watching.
And you are the best person to observe because you were the member of the
Election
election
Commission.
commission.
Thank you so much, HISILA ji.
Thank you, all of you. If you have any last question, I think we still have.
I think we shouldn't take, if you have questions, you can always write in the chat box, Timila ji. But please be very, very brief.
Just specific. Question, no? Not
Very brief.
explanation.
Not a question, it's a suggestion. We talked about inclusion, we talked about technology.
what I feel is the way Daughter of Nepal film was made, Surbi Dewan was here. She was very keen on capturing what happened to my parents' generation, our generation, Manushi's generation, or maybe future generation. That will be really great. It's not only our family. It could be other great families here, hidden ones. Can we capture all those things through small videos, personally, from home? All of you to participate. I think India is excellent in creating visuals, visual films and short films and all that. So can Indian Embassy actually guide the youth of Nepal to create film of families, not only ours, but I'm sure a lot of families have hidden history. I just want to pass on this message. Please, please, all of us should, this is the future, because the future generation wants visual. Books will be replaced mostly by visuals and videos. So this is my
Totally
suggestion.
agree,
Thank you.
Timilaji. We need to document our history.
Yeah, document, visual
documentation is very, very important.
Yeah,
and
very
Timilaji is the sister who is an engineer who was studying
elder
at the
sister
Kanpur IIT,
who took
where
HISILA
HISILA
to
went to
IIT
school.
Kanpur, and so the Three Idiots was, the book was written by alumni of IIT Kanpur, and it got converted into a film. So he's an example. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I need to thank the embassy, Priyadarshini ji here, and the ambassador.
Last question, Monzagi. The last, I think that should be the last.
Very short, is there going to be a Nepali translation?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I didn't want a D2 copy of this into a Nepali translation, because I came across so many reminiscences and also additional, even while I was just rereading right now, there were many things came into my mind which I can now include in my Nepali version.
Yes, that is important, because not everybody can read English. So let's thank the Indian Embassy for providing this hall to the Samparka Bharat Nepal, the Alumni Association which has hosted this event. Thank you, Priyadarshini ji, and the team, Neeraj, Anupama, who is not here today, and the rest of the technical crew there, and for the ambassador for coming here for a bit. Thank you so much.
From my side also, thank you to Quatra and His Excellency Quatra, and I'm thankful to Nagma, the DCM. In fact, she was the one who, she was the one who invited, why don't you have a book discussion, and I suppose she's not here right now. And I'm really thankful to Priyadarshini. I think she's the one who was, running around the whole thing, show and all that from behind. Thank you, all of you. And of course, thank you to Samparka, because I'm also part of it. And I invite other students who studied in India to be part of it.
We should all register, whoever has studied in India. There is a huge number, and
there's potentiality also behind this organization.
So people can mentor, there can be many activities. It's not only for the scholarship receivers, it's for everybody who has studied in India. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, HISILA ji.
Thank you.